First of all, let me thank the media for coming this afternoon, and also my colleagues who joined me in addressing an issue that is indeed quite horrifying and revealing. We are talking about the conditions under which juvenile offenders are being housed and managed. And let me say right at the outset that I wish to commend the staff at both centers for their commitment, for their dedication to the work that they have set before them, particularly in light of the circumstances under which they have to operate. On Tuesday, November 1st, we visited the Simpson Penn Center for Boys, and this morning we visited the Melanie Pratt Center for Girls. At Simpson Penn, we found young men living in cottages under conditions really not even fit for animals. There were windows without louvers that left them open to the elements. In fact, the younger boys were brought over to the cottage of the older boys because they couldn't stay in their cottages because it was raining at the time. There were broken and rusted light fixtures, and so in many instances in the cottages there was no light. Very few beds, many of them are sleeping on mattresses on the floor, and some of the existing beds are supported by board. In the cottages, the area of that is usually the sitting area, there was hard wooden makeshift benches and tables, and kitchen cupboards were unhinged and hanging, the doors were hanging. Bathrooms were out of order, unclean, and smelly. Rust was just about everywhere. Overgrown bushes, in some cases, right up to the building and fences, which presented, of course, a security risk. But equally, and perhaps maybe more, some may argue, significant, we found a situation of overcrowding, one which I had mentioned in June during the budget debate, where at that time there were 88 young men or residents in the Simpson Penn Center. When we visited, there were 60 young men living in 3 cottages designed to house up to 36 persons collectively. So there were 20 persons in each cottage, which was designed to hold 12 persons each. There were 16-year-olds out of school and confined all day because the Penn Pratt School apparently is a junior high school and only takes children up to 16 years. The fact that these 16 to 18-year-olds, 16 and 17-year-olds, were out of school and are out of school doing nothing is a direct contravention of the Child Protection Act, Clause 144C2. There, at the Simpson Penn, and I dare say to a lesser degree even at Melanie Pratt, there is a shortage of staff. Therefore, the staff is unable to monitor and supervise the boys as they should. They are overwhelmed and working under extremely poor conditions and in fear. The staff is for their own safety. External security services have been ceased now for quite a while, I understand, and no extra security services for the increased numbers of residents, which would have been mandated by the Child Protection Act. And I again questioned this issue during the budget debate last June. There seems to be little to no rehabilitative programs. The YES program, which is one of their best programs, I understand at this facility has been aborted. I also understand that there's no social worker on staff. So there's no case management or social histories being done for residents and no one tracking their progress or lack of progress. There's no psychologist on staff to deal with the problems of residents or staff. There's also no activities officer to provide ongoing, consistent programs for the residents. It is clear that the government of the Bahamas brought the Child Protection Act into force with little or no provisions and resources to ensure that it could and would be successfully enforced and managed. It has had more, and the government has had more than enough time to build a proper facility at Simpson Penn to house the older boys it was mandated to take by the Child Protection Act. It has had more than enough time to hire staff to properly man, secure, and supervise the residents. The lack of manpower has led to the destruction of the place in many cases because the residents are under-supervised. In one case, it has been reported that one supervisor was required to monitor 50 residents. The staff is overworked and frustrated because they cannot get the assistance they need to do their work satisfactorily, which leads to high levels of absenteeism. Additionally, while institutions are always open to abscondments or escapes, the level of such activities increase because of living conditions. We must also ask ourselves the question, if these young men are housed in conditions unsuitable for animals, how does it impact on them and their behavior while confined and when they are released? Are we contributing to making criminals? That is a question we have to always be asking. Parents and society expect that when young people are placed in juvenile detention centers, there will be some level of rehabilitation to impact their lives positively before they return to their communities. We want to recognize again the efforts of the new superintendent and his entire staff under the circumstances. But really, in the absence of governmental support and resources, a change in leadership makes very little difference as indicated by the increased level of abscondments. Finally, it is clear that there seems to be no collaboration between government ministries because the Penn Pratt Co-ed School is also experiencing its share of problems due to the increased numbers of residents at both centers. They have a shortage of classrooms, and therefore they have resorted to using the library. They have a shortage of supplies, teachers, and materials. And in fact, teachers have been using their own resources, their own finances, to ensure that some of their programs are carried on. Further, there is no provision has been made to replace the Cosmetology Center, which was put out of service because the building which housed it was condemned several years ago. It is also clear that no adjustment was made to the program for the continuing education of the 16 and 17-year-olds, whether within the system or externally. So their education is at a standstill. Can you imagine 16 and 17-year-olds confined to a cottage on a daily basis, idle? Idle. There's something wrong with that picture. And so, obviously, some adjustment needed to be made in order to ensure that these 16 and 17-year-olds could continue their education while they are at the center. The Ministries of Labor and Social Development and Education must move quickly to rectify the absolutely horrifying conditions which residents and staff must endure at this center. The government is to be condemned for the conditions which exist here at Simpson Penn, and we urge them to move immediately to address the issues noted in this press statement and restore better living and working conditions for staff and residents. Staff morale is extremely, extremely low. because of the situation that they have to work in. And so once that, I believe, once that everything is restored, we'll be able to restore order and control in the center.